And so for me, self-care means looking at my professional practice and aligning it with my personal habits and tendencies, and trying to acknowledge where I tend to overwork, where I tend to overthink, overanalyze, be too perfectionist about something, and then find my strategies to get out of that mode. I've found for myself to make time for the many other things that I love in life that helps to set boundaries for where and when I'm gonna crank out a chunk of lesson planning work. So usually for peace and quiet, I will stay a little late a couple days at school. I've also learned to hold myself to just kind of a baseline standard for teaching, and not to go crazy with every little thing, but instead to be deeply reflective on what's a heavy hitting area that I really want to learn a lot about and improve my teaching in this direction. I love solving puzzles, and teaching is just a giant puzzle for me. And I think it always will be. So the work will always be there.
So this is a big struggle to have some kind of work-life balance, and I think it was my principal who calls it trying to have work-life wholeness as opposed to work-life balance. Because I guess in my setting, I teach high school students, and sometimes stuff will bleed over, or the only time I can reach a student or reach a parent is going to be after work hours. But I try to make sure that weekends are off limits. So if I do have to work, I try to do any work on a Saturday morning to leave a Sunday completely free from work. I go to the gym after work, so I tried to find a gym that was near to work, and I found a class with a start time that would force me to leave the building. So my strategy is a 4:30 class. So I have exactly like an hour and 15 minutes that I can stay after school and get everything ready and kind of clean up my classroom and all that stuff. And then when the clock ticks, it makes me have somewhere to be. And then another thing I do is I try to stay off of my phone or stay off of email. So I have my work email on my phone, and I often have students and things that will text that number, and I'll just try to stay off my phone. And at night I will read physical books, not a Kindle. I found a Kindle doesn't work to completely shut down and shut off from some of the technology.
So I have two young kids. I have a 5-month-old and a 2-year-old. I have a husband. We've got a pretty busy life, and teaching can be pretty all-consuming, especially when working with English language learners, because there's so much differentiation that you need to do. You're trying to reach kids at so many different levels, and it would be easy to spend hours and hours every day lesson planning and perfecting everything and trying to get it to where it's exactly right for every single student. But I think that the reality, for me at least, is that I have to let go. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, and it's taken a little bit of time to learn how to let that go. I know that at 3:30 I need to be done. I need to go take a walk. I need to rest my eyes. I need to have some alone time. I need to be done with work before I go pick up my kids. When I pick them up, I want to have that time with them where I'm recharged, where I'm not exhausted. So I have a set end time every single day. Sometimes I think, oh, I could have done more. I could have added audio to these slides, or I could have created an extra special activity for this one student, and it would be perfect for this one student. But I think the important thing for my own well-being is to have that balance and make sure that I'm spending time with my family, that I'm spending time for myself, that I'm doing what I can at work and trying really hard to meet my students, and to give them, I want to have a smiling face. I want them to feel welcome. I want them to feel like I care about them. I want to give them some instruction. But to just let go of that and need for everything to be exactly perfect. I don't work at night and I don't work on the weekends because I need that time away. And I think that that's really important. I think you face burnout pretty quickly.
I remember having a conversation with my personal counselor, and I was talking about how my problems aren't anywhere near as big as so and so's problems. And she told me that your problems are your problems. You can only base your experiences on your own experience. You can't compare it to anyone else's. So when she told me that, I carry that on to my students, as far as even if I hear similar stories in different years, those are those students' stories. And I can't say, oh, I've heard it before, because this is a new student, this is a new year, this is a new experience. And even just that comment or that thing that she told me just helped me to realize, or helped me not become hardened, where like I've heard it all before. And I like to let them be heard. And I know this is about self-care, but hearing how the students spend their vacations, or hearing how the students, if their vacation didn't go well, if they were sad, being able to connect with them and let them know that, hey, I was sad as well. Or I also went and saw the Christmas tree lights. Having that kind of connection every year with a new set of students is also a part of self-care, because I'm building this family instead of just having a job. But outside of my own therapy and making sure I create a environment where I also feel welcome, because I know a lot of people say, oh, make sure the kids feel welcome and so forth, but it's also about making yourself feel welcome and making sure that you're respected as a teacher when you walk into your classroom. Because if you walk into the classroom and the kids are just off the walls or just being disrespectful, and you can't have a serious conversation with them, as much as I like to joke around, but you can't have a serious conversation about respect or respecting my language as well, and my culture, it wouldn't be fun to go into. Just creating that environment from the beginning, letting them know that I'm planning to learn from you just as much as I'm planning to teach you. That's a part of my self-care. And then outside of the building and outside of the students' self-care and outside of therapy, going for hikes and getting away from the city, going for walks has been my jam for the past 7 years. Even in grad school, just making sure I get to get away from all of the stimulation, and just emptying my brain of work and school.
Yeah, my first year of teaching was really hard. I don't know many teachers that didn't have a difficult first year of teaching. That's just the nature of the beast. But I think the hardest part I thought the hardest part when I was in that first year, I thought the hardest part was that I didn't know how to teach yet. And in retrospect, I realized the hardest part was that I didn't know myself well enough yet to be able to tell myself when to cut myself slack, when to stop working on that thing because it's been 30 minutes and you got other stuff you got to do, when I need to go back and really rethink a lesson, or when I just need to go, you know what, it didn't work, I have to teach something else tomorrow, so I'm just, going to continue on. So I think for me, the process of learning how to teach is kind of twofold. Like there's learning how to teach, and then there's learning how to live life as a teacher. And I've noticed that a lot of teachers are perfectionists. And I think if you are you certainly don't need to be a perfectionist to be a teacher. But whether you are or you aren't, I think you need to know that about yourself. And you need to learn when to push yourself. And that might mean pushing yourself to work more, but usually for most teachers I know, that means pushing yourself to give yourself more slack, to just teach that lesson, even though it's not perfect, but it's like 90% of the way there, because you don't have all the time in the world. And so one thing that I have learned to do is to aim to not expect things to not expect to feel 100% ready for every lesson, because I'll go crazy.